All right, y'all. This might be the absolute craziest discovery I've ever made about Graham Hancock. It's an unknown interview from 1996 for the South African TV show Focus, and it totally documents the birth of Graham Hancock's cult.
The public were not to be told what was found under the Sphinx until the millionaire leading the entire expedition decided that the public should be told. We think there's a danger that an attempt is being made to fulfill prophecy here using big money.
Welcome to Archaeology with Flint Dibble. I'm Flint Dibble, but let's meet Graham Hancock, the leader of the Doomsday cult of fake archaeology. Look, we all know Graham Hancock as the most popular purveyor of fake archaeology in today's world, with his best-selling books and TV shows. He's convinced millions of people that there's a globe-spanning civilization with advanced technology from the Ice Age, despite the fact that he has no evidence at all. This video from 1996 provides a new perspective on Graham before he was popular. In my opinion, it seems to show that he's willing to just straight up lie about archaeology and about archaeologists in the clearest possible way. Most importantly, the whole video gives off this really creepy cult vibe. The video begins with some of Hancock's fans in the mid 1990s when he was still a relatively unknown figure, but his books were starting to grow in popularity. The year is 1996, 1 year after Fingerprints of the Gods came out.
For the last 30 years or so, which have been the orthodox doctrine, is just being blown away by him, and they just don't want to know about it. It's almost as if there's a big conspiracy against him. It's a lot of pompous scholars around, who just don't want to know about it.
I had a look at the Sphinx, and the watermarks or the erosion on the Sphinx indicates definitely that the age of the Sphinx is, as he says, not 2,500 years.
I think it's mind-boggling. It obviously still leaves questions of doubt because nothing is proven, but there is so much geological and astronomical fact in what he's given us that it can't be left alone.
I think there are a number of reasons why it's so successful. I think that, first of all, it's written by Graham Hancock, who is a regular person. He's not a crackpot fanatic. He's not an academic with hundreds of PhDs behind his name. He is an investigative journalist, and he was taken by this and wanted to find out more about it. So it's something that people can relate to. It's very readable, and it makes people say, stand up and say, why have we not known this before? And we've been hoodwinked.
I think they were all the survivors of a lost civilization, determined to keep the light of their knowledge burning in the world, and they spread around and settled in different places, and this is a memory of them.
Come on, this is just a classic example of poisoning the well. There's a big conspiracy of pompous scholars who are trying to shut him down. Cry me a fucking river. Fingerprints had just come out a year before. Graham was basically an unknown person at this point. Nobody was trying to shut him down, man. He's neither a crackpot, nor a fanatic, nor an academic with 100 PhDs. He's just a dude like you and me, but with some pretty amazing ideas that will open your mind. In the next section, the interviewer teases the climax of the video.
A disquieting aspect of Hancock's work is the fact that he believes the Egyptian authorities have granted excavation licenses to a fanatic American multimillionaire who is part of a sect that is hell-bent on fulfilling the predictions of a psychic who died 50 years ago. Hancock says the work these people are doing at the Sphinx is secret, and they have no intention of sharing the knowledge of their findings.
Come on, more poisoning the well before the interview even starts. There's apparently a huge cover-up. A fanatic multimillionaire who's part of a secret sect and is somehow controlling Egyptian archaeology. If this is true, it's a huge story, a massive example of colonialism and foreign wealth interfering with the Egyptian management of their most important heritage site. Archaeologists themselves will be up in arms about this. That is, if it was actually true.
Personally, what they're doing to the monuments, with this multimillionaire who's just basically buying up the pyramid. And the guy says he's going to drum as much out of it as possible and just use it as some kind of big publicity stunt or something.
I think Graham Hancock should actually be involved in the whole thing because he seems to have a neutral overview of the whole story.
Commercial fact, the money pumped into it is wrong. Science should be placed before commerce. This information belongs to humanity. And the information is there not just for a minute group, but for us all at this time of crisis to extend our consciousnesses and awaken people.
Tell me this isn't a cult. Come on, seriously, tell me this isn't a cult. The music, the text, the setup, it is 100% cult vibes. Graham is the charismatic cult leader who imparts esoteric knowledge, setting up Hancock as a hero or savior whose enlightened ideas will extend our consciousness and expose the evil millionaire that has somehow bought up the pyramids of Giza. This is like the perfect plot for a fantasy movie, complete with creepy music. Except, of course, they're all pretending that it's real. All right, this is the introduction and setup. Let's dive into the interview.
With us in the studio tonight is Graham Hancock, former journalist and author of the 3 connected books, The Sign and the Seal, Fingerprints of the Gods, and Keeper of Genesis. His books are a drastic re-evaluation of man's past using the latest technology available to us. He says the orthodox ideas of a linear historical development is simplistic and way off the mark. Graham, good evening and welcome to Focus on Sunday.
Good evening. Thank you.
Your final line in Fingerprints of the Gods is, there is indeed nothing new under the sun. Tell me what prompted you to undertake the ultimate journalistic investigation. Where do we come from and where are we going to?
Jesus Christ, such over-the-top flattery. The ultimate journalistic investigation. Where do we come from? And where are we going to? That little laugh betrays that she's just here to set up Hancock's rehearsed answers.
Tell me what prompted you to undertake the ultimate journalistic investigation. Where do we come from and where are we going to?
A sense of an enormous and unexplained mystery in our past. And my sense of this mystery came from my first contact with ancient Egypt, and the realization that this extraordinary civilization, which created the most wonderful monuments that the world has ever known, and which passed down to us a spiritual tradition of tremendous depth and wisdom, appeared from literally nowhere on the stage of history. It's as though at one moment there are little more than primitive hunter-gatherers and agriculturalists in the Nile Valley, and at the next moment they're building pyramids. They have a fully evolved writing system. They have incredibly sophisticated spiritual ideas. There's no evidence of an evolution to account for the sudden emergence of this society. It's just there, fully formed, and I wanted to find out why was this so, and
Graham is either a liar and a con artist, or simply put, the worst journalist in the world. I won't spend so much time debunking everything he says in such detail, but this is his first claim. And there's so much stunning archaeology that proves either he did little to no investigative journalism, or he's flat out lying. The core mystery for Graham is that Egypt appears out of nowhere. The early Egyptians are sneered at as no more than primitive hunter-gatherers, who in the very next moment are suddenly building grand pyramids. This is all just a lie. Anybody who has read anything about Egyptian archaeology knows it's simply not fucking true. Cattle husbandry and pottery first shows up in the Western Sahara of Egypt around 8000 BC. We can see this trend at the famous site of Nabta Playa, where a megalithic stone circle was later erected 1,000 years before Stonehenge. It's fucking cool. It was a calendar. Agriculture next shows up in the Fayum and Nile region around 6000 BC, with the arrival of a whole suite of domesticated plants and animals from the Fertile Crescent. With these developments, larger settlements start becoming established across Egypt. Our first hieroglyphs are from 3250 BC, so over 5,000 years ago. They were essentially labels and accounts at first, not transmitting stories or histories. This ceramic jar from Abydos dates to 3100 BC, and it's one of our very first historical records because it mentions King Ka, a local pre-dynastic ruler whose tomb has been excavated. Nearby at Hierakonpolis, archaeologists have also found the Narmer palette, which reveals the conquest and unification of Upper and Lower Egypt around this time by Pharaoh Narmer. All this happened hundreds and thousands of years before the pyramids appear. But it's at this time when tombs are starting to become bigger and more elaborate. And we can trace the development of Egyptian tombs from mastabas to step pyramid to the straight pyramids to the great pyramids. Heck, I have a whole deep dive on this with Egyptologist Dr. Beth Hart. They don't appear out of nowhere.
But when you look at these in the context of over time, how they develop over time, all the different components, they all really make sense together. And it's more challenging to see individual pieces as like an anomaly. So that's a perspective I want to take and just give people some of that context of what was happening and, the 1,000 years leading up to the Giza pyramids and all that we see there.
And are we seeing this chronologically right here in this slide, I'm guessing? Sort of from
More or
top
less,
to bottom? Okay. Let's get back to Graham and the birth of his Doomsday cult.
In your research, you speculate about what happened in about the 11th millennium. It seems as if a cataclysmic event overwhelmed the earth and destroyed much of everything.
There's no doubt that something awful happened to the earth at the end of what we think of as the last ice age.
What do you mean, no doubt? Give me a break, man. The confidence with which you say no doubt just smacks of, well, a confidence man. All he'd have to do is read a book about the end of the Ice Age to know that most scholars doubt the idea for such a cataclysm in 1996, and they still doubt such a cataclysm today. Most of them think the gradual warming of the planet opened up all sorts of possibilities for humans, spurring the development of agriculture around the world.
There's no doubt that something awful happened to the earth at the end of what we think of as the last ice age. Everybody knows there was an ice age. Whole of northern Europe was covered in ice more than 2 miles deep. Most of North America, the same, 2-mile thick ice caps, 6 million square miles of it. This ice was stable for 100,000 years, and then suddenly, around 14,000 years ago, for reasons that no geologist has ever been able adequately to explain.
No geologist has ever been able to explain it? What the fuck? This is the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard. Well before 1996, scholars understood Milankovitch cycles, changes in the Earth's orbit, and their impact on interglacial periods when the ice melted. Graham's timeline is all wrong too. The last glacial maximum was around 25,000 years ago, not 14,000 years ago, when the ice started melting gradually over tens of thousands of years. Again, these are all just lies, or this journalist has done no investigation at all.
It all melted. Within just 1,000 years, that huge, enormous quantity of ice was gone. Sea levels had gone up by 400 feet. Hundreds of animal species had been rendered extinct all around the world. There's evidence of enormous volcanic activity, earthquakes. Nobody knows for sure what happens. The only thing we can say definitely did happen was a catastrophe, a cataclysm. By any definition, this was no slow-acting climate change. This was something terrible. Maybe it was a strike by an asteroid, a huge meteorite hitting the Earth. Maybe it was a displacement of the entire outer crust of the Earth. I review some of these theories in Fingerprints of the Gods. The honest answer is we don't know what caused it, but something dreadful happened.
I love this. Graham goes from a confident, no doubt, and ends with, the honest answer is we don't know what caused it. Again, I need to highlight that none of these ideas have been confirmed with evidence. It's all doubted.
So we have a handful of survivors of this lost civilization surviving the cataclysm and settling amongst peoples in various parts of the world. Take us briefly through that scenario.
I think that this is perhaps the most interesting aspect of it for me, is that all around the world are preserved memories in myths of this enormous cataclysm. The flood of Noah in the Bible is an example, and Noah's Ark is an example of the survivors. All these myths suggest that there were survivors, that they settled in many different parts of the world, and that their determination was to keep the light of their knowledge burning. And this was not just a high technical knowledge capable of creating wonderful monuments, but also a high spiritual knowledge, that these were a people who had a sense of the meaning and mystery of life, a sense of how we should live to make our lives purposeful, and a sense of the life beyond death and what we need to do to prepare for it, and that they sought desperately to pass this knowledge down to the future so that it would not be extinguished from the world, so that it would not be entirely lost.
Of course, the goddamn flood myths. Look, There's flood myths everywhere, so they must all be connected. Really? Really? I mean, just in my lifetime, I saw the flooding of New Orleans by Hurricane Katrina and the flooding of the nuclear reactor at Fukushima in Japan by a tsunami. Both have had major economic and political impacts. Both have led to movies and crazy stories, but neither are related to one another. Seriously, what's more likely? Every flood story talks about the same flood, each a secret story cherished for tens of thousands of years. Or the myths talk about different major floods in different times in different places. Floods are and were a big fucking deal. They've wiped out settlements. They've led to epic struggles for survival. We need more than just a mention of a flood to say it's the same story. Floods happened all the time.
But the place where they made their greatest mark and left their most lasting legacy was at Giza in Egypt. And the three great pyramids and the great Sphinx of Egypt are an integral part of this mystery, and they are not the tombs of megalomaniac pharaohs.
But then, why don't you believe the Egyptians who tell us in countless hieroglyphic texts that the pyramids were their tombs of their early pharaohs? Why not?
That's been popular belief up to now, especially by the Egyptologists, that this is where the pharaohs were buried more than, and that was the main raison d'etre for the
One
pyramids.
of the horrifying things that I learned as I was doing this research is that there is not a single shred of worthwhile evidence which supports the Egyptological view that the three great pyramids of Giza in Egypt were tombs. There are more than 90 pyramids in Egypt. Many of them from later times were tombs. But these early and mysterious pyramids never contained any burial of any pharaoh. They were found when they were first opened by the Arabs in the 9th century to be completely empty and clean as new pins. They contain no inscriptions of any kind. They are totally anonymous, and the Great Pyramid weighs 6 million tons. It has a 14-acre footprint. It's more than 450 feet tall.
There is not a single shred of evidence that the pyramids were tombs. Come on, man. These statements are either straight up lies or extremely misleading. There are hieroglyphic inscriptions in the Great Pyramid that mention Khufu. There is the diary of a worker who helped build the pyramid, although admittedly I'll agree that was discovered more recently. There were coffins in all three pyramids in Giza, coffins that had been looted and emptied. A quick plug, my video next week is on this very topic, with a deep dive into the mystery of the Great Pyramid of Giza, complete with an interview with the legend himself, Dr. Zahi Hawass. At the beating heart of the Great Pyramid of Giza is the key to understanding it, and that is this right here, the sarcophagus.
Another gang name was found through CD, and this was found 6 months ago, and mentioning year 13 of Khufu's reign, written by the workmen before they moved the stones.
What I find especially funny is that Graham says he agrees that later pyramids were tombs. But most later pyramids also had empty sarcophagi. Practically every single tomb, with the exception of King Tut, ever found in Egypt was found completely looted. Pyramids, underground tombs, whatever. Looted, 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 looted. So Graham, why do you believe the later pyramids are tombs, but the three found at Giza aren't? It makes no sense at all. This is just straight up stupidity.
Just backtracking a bit, these master scientists and knowledgeable people, what is the scenario? They found themselves amongst people who were a lot less knowledgeable, who were fairly barbaric in comparison. Why the great split?
I think what the evidence supports is the settlement of a very small group of people who are remembered in Egyptian traditions as the gods. And amongst these, the archetypal figure was Osiris, the god of resurrection and rebirth, the bringer of civilization to Egypt, seen as the founder of the dynasty to which all the pharaohs belonged. There was a direct connection between the pharaohs of Egypt and this remote period when they said the gods came to their land, and they saw themselves as the descendants of the gods.
Okay. So we don't believe the Egyptian stories about their pyramids at Giza being tombs, but we do believe their stories that they were descended from gods. Make it make sense, man. Help. Seriously, almost every early society claimed they descended from gods. It's how people claimed authority and superiority.
There's also new evidence, the work that you're talking about and some other work that has shown us that the Sphinx is not as young as it's thought to be.
Geology is the other science that brings to bear on this. The Great Sphinx is a totally anonymous monument. It bears no inscriptions of any kind, and it's undatable by carbon dating. You need organic material for that. So just like the pyramids, it's a mystery. But the mystery has partially been solved by Professor Robert Schoch of Boston University, a leading specialist in the weathering of limestone, and the Sphinx is a limestone monument. He's shown that it was exposed to thousands of years of heavy rainfall after it was first carved out of the bedrock. And such rains did not fall in Egypt in 2500 BC when the Sphinx is supposed to have been built. The last time that such rains fell in Egypt was when the Sahara Desert was still green, at the end of the last ice age, more than 12,000 years ago. Everything is focusing our attention on the date of 12,000 or more years ago.
Graham is seriously the worst journalist ever. The African humid period, also known as the Green Sahara, ended about 5,500 years ago and does not point to 12,000 years ago. What the fuck, man? This is just terrible journalism, if you want to call it journalism. The Sphinx erosion story is also total bullshit and based off of absolutely pathetic evidence. It still rains heavily at Giza. I know this because I experienced it myself on my very first visit to Giza. In the taxi, just next to Giza, it started pouring rain and slicked up the road. Our cab was rammed from behind. My colleagues and I had to sit and looking at the pyramids from the window while our cabbie got into a shouting match with the guy who rammed him. I've also got a whole video with 2 geologists who show quite clearly that the Sphinx is not older than the thought, and that the geological argument for weathering ignores modern weathering that we can observe happening right now in real time. It's being monitored.
Time for a break. When we return, we will continue talking with author Graham Hancock. Stay tuned.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's time for a quick breather, crack a beer, do some push-ups, smoke a joint, whatever it is that suits you, because the real cray-cray parts of this video, they're still to come.
Everything indicates that an enormous labyrinth of underground corridors and passageways lies beneath these monuments, and that initiates were immersed in this subterranean world to prepare for the journey that they confidently expected they would have to undertake after death. And the ancient texts speak of a great secret of the gods concealed there, a secret that would reveal the divine origins of Egyptian civilization and the steps that were necessary for us to take in order to attain eternity.
I cannot emphasize enough that these are all lies again. The bedrock at Giza has been explored extensively, dozens upon dozens of drillings, all hitting the water table tens of meters below, as well as many forms of remote sensing, electroresistivity, muon scanning, ground-penetrating radar, and even more. There simply is no labyrinth or hidden city under the Sphinx or the pyramids. Similarly, there are no ancient Egyptian texts speaking about a secret hidden there. Jason Colavito has documented quite clearly in his book on the pyramids that these stories of hidden knowledge or treasure are legends from the medieval world, not earlier.
Curiously enough, not only the pharaohs appear to have sought for that secret, we've discovered in our research that a modern-day quest is going on at Giza for precisely the same thing.
And apparently this has been done secretly with licenses that have been granted under strange circumstances. Tell us about the society that is conducting this research.
There's an odd American organization called the Edgar Cayce Organization, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, which exists to promulgate the teachings of an American psychic, Edgar Cayce. Now, Edgar Cayce died in the 1940s, but before his death, he spoke repeatedly of the lost civilization of Atlantis, and he said that survivors of Atlantis had built the Sphinx and that they'd concealed a hall of records beneath its pores containing all the wisdom of their civilization, and that this hall of records, he prophesied, would be opened between 1996 and 1998. Oddly enough, an American team led by a multimillionaire who is a life member of the Association for Research and Enlightenment have been granted a license just 2 months ago by the Egyptian Antiquities Organization to conduct an expedition at the Sphinx. They're there now with $1 million worth of ground-penetrating radar and seismic equipment.
Okay. What the fuck? This is literally as nutso as it sounds. Now let's back up. Let's unpack this cover-up. Edgar Cayce was a famous psychic from the early 20th century. He went into supposed trances and talked with his ancestors from Atlantis and Egypt. He's the one who popularized the idea of a hall of records existing under the Sphinx, which we know doesn't exist because of all the investigations there. Now, it is true that his sons founded the Edgar Cayce Foundation to promote Cayce's psychic predictions. And it is true that this foundation contributed funds to archaeological research in Egypt. For example, the famous radiocarbon dates published from the pyramids across Egypt that confirms their dates to the Old Kingdom. That was partially funded by this organization. The followers of Edgar Cayce, like Graham Hancock, believed that the pyramids and Sphinx were older than Egyptologists claimed. So, the foundation put their money where their mouth was and donated funds for radiocarbon sampling to test their hypothesis. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's be clear, the primary funding for this radiocarbon project came from David H. Koch, the famed billionaire political activist, not the Edgar Cayce Foundation. And the study was led by trained archaeologists and scientists and overseen by the Egyptian Ministry of Culture. But seriously, Graham's claims, they get even crazier.
Team operating with great secrecy. We were invited by the team working at the Sphinx to be part of their expedition because they were very interested in our astronomical work. Our astronomical work, when you transpose a map of the sky in 10,500 BC down onto the monuments, it indicates a place to look under the Sphinx. But they imposed upon us a condition that we could not accept, and that condition was absolute secrecy, and that the public were not to be told what was found under the Sphinx until the millionaire leading the entire expedition decided that the public should be told. When the Edgar Cayce prophecy was made, he said the Hall of Records would be opened between 96 and 98, but he also said the information in the Hall of Records would not be shared with the public. We think there's a danger that an attempt is being made to fulfill prophecy here using big money.
What the fuck? He fears an attempt is being made to fulfill prophecy, and they're using big money. What the fuck is this? And they're keeping it all secret. This is the wildest thing I think I've ever heard Graham Hancock say. It's absolutely the biggest phony baloney that I've ever heard about fake archaeology in my life. This is perhaps the clearest evidence that convinces me that Graham Hancock is a knowing liar. Nothing has been kept secret. All of these investigations have been published in the decade after. The radiocarbon dates were published in 2001 and an updated sequencing in 2011. They confirmed that the pyramids, not just those at Giza, but others around Egypt, were constructed during the Old and Middle Kingdom periods and not significantly earlier. The American Research Center in Egypt survey of the Sphinx that Graham discusses here has also been comprehensively published. The raw granular data is available on the online archive Open Context. Countless measurements, 2,716 photographs, 5,000 slides accompanied by plans and maps. Links to all of these are below. Similarly, a number of very popular books and journal articles have been published summarizing the results very openly for everybody. From Mark Lehner's Complete Pyramids, which appeared in 1997, to Zahi Hawas's Pyramids, Treasures, Mysteries, and New Discoveries, which was published in 2003. You just need to know where to look in the library and online to find all this information.
You recently had a briefing for the Egyptian ambassador in Washington.
I did.
What has been the response to what you told him? Because you said that you didn't feel that certain level of the Egyptian government was aware of what was going on.
I think that this matter has been entrusted to a relatively small department within the Egyptian Antiquities Organization, and that most of the rest of the Egyptian government doesn't know what is happening at Giza. I gave a briefing to the Egyptian ambassador to Washington, D.C., together with a number of American senators, and we're calling for an international public inquiry into this project at the Sphinx and into the project that is taking place inside the Great Pyramid.
Wow. Graham Hancock actually brought this completely nutso conspiracy theory to United States senators and the Egyptian ambassador to the US. What a fucking nothing burger. All of this has been published comprehensively in the open and is available. Look, if this conspiracy was real, actual archaeologists would be shouting about it. An American millionaire controlling data from Giza would be a scandal of epic proportions. The legacy of colonialism is right now a huge deal in Egyptology today. From the recent calls to return the Rosetta Stone to the Egyptian Ministry of Culture asserting agency in controlling its heritage sites. The smoking gun is that Graham has completely forgotten about this conspiracy theory. If it was true, the cover-up would still matter today. So the fact that he's not bringing it up proves that he doesn't believe it. He's moved on because he knows it's all fucking bullshit.
Graham, you've been working on this project and amassed a body of work that is quite stupendous. What has been the effect on you and your own spiritual development of uncovering all this knowledge?
It has completely changed my outlook on the meaning of life.
Look at how he leans in here after this softball setup. What a fucking con job.
It has completely changed my outlook on the meaning of life. 10 years ago, I was totally atheistic. I thought, like most of our modern scientists today, that life was just a sort of cosmic sick joke, that we were a kind of accidental collection of molecules with no purpose or function whatsoever. My immersion in the ancient texts, the scriptures of the Egyptians, has caused me to review that attitude. And I passionately believe that life has meaning, and that everything that I do and that we all do here counts, and how we behave towards one another matters, and we will be judged, and there will be a reckoning on what we do. I think that life is a precious opportunity. We shouldn't waste a single second of it.
Wow, what an ego. Look, here we can see Graham fully embracing the role of being a spiritual cult leader with all of its trappings. He defines his new form of pseudoscience, a combo of twisting actual science with his invented version of esoteric and ancient Egyptian knowledge. This is just so fucking nutso. By the way, did you know that Graham Hancock currently ranks 20th on Watkins' spiritual list for 2025? He's a real serious spiritual leader. His rhetoric works.
You indicate that we could be bringing another cataclysm down upon our heads in the near future, as close as 2013?
All the ancient traditions which speak of the destruction of a great civilization in a horrendous cataclysm thousands of years ago warn that that cataclysm could return, and many of them focus on our time, on our epoch. The Maya of Central America actually put a date on it, the 23rd of December, 2012 AD, when you translate their calendar into ours. But all these ancient traditions also say that that former civilization which was destroyed in some manner brought down the destruction on its own heads. I think mankind stands poised at a crossroads. I think we stand poised at a moment of choice. We must choose between good and evil, between the better or the worse. I think we can choose our own destiny. I don't think there has to be a cataclysm, but I think we are heading down a path to destruction, and the time has come for us to make up our minds that we're not going to go that way any longer, to reach into our hearts and find the decency and the goodness and the worth of human life, the precious gift that we've all been given.
This is a fucking doomsday cult. I've covered this before in my video about Joe Rogan and fake archaeology. Check it out here. The reality is that Graham Hancock has been full of shit for decades. In the late 90s, he claimed some blurry photos were evidence of monuments from an advanced civilization on Mars that was destroyed in an ancient apocalyptic cosmic impact.
And it's a very important point that the face structure, whatever it is, whether it's a hill or whether it's actually some kind of face, is set in a context, and that context is very large, surrounded by a lot of other structures, been hit by a bombardment of asteroids, or I believe more likely fragments of a giant comet. And the question that really arises is Earth subject to the same fate that Mars has been subject? And this is why the monuments on Mars, in inverted commas, of course, the alleged monuments on Mars, are so interesting to me, because taken in context with the cataclysmic history of the planet, with, again, disputed evidence of primitive microbial life on the planet, which under any normal evolutionary laws one would expect eventually to have developed into higher life forms. But to me, this raises a whole other issue over the story of life on Mars, and the story of what happened to Mars, and the story of what happened to Earth.
Graham Hancock is full of feces. The reason we don't hear about the face on Mars and these other structures, alleged structures, in the Cydonia region is because they were based off of stupid blurry photos. And high-res photos now show these are just natural plateaus. So in the 2000s, Hancock cleverly pivoted and abandoned the Mars mystery, but he kept much of the same cataclysmic story, nearly word for word, updated to match the 2012 Mayan apocalypse.
The prophecy, literally, of the end of the world in our time, certainly of the end of civilization as we know it, and very specific dates. And the date the Maya put on it, translated into our calendar, is the 21st of December, 2012. The fragments of a comet that had struck the Earth before might be due to return in exactly this period, and perhaps the Maya used fortuitous events in the sky, which they were able to predict extremely accurately, to act as a marker or a signal for the return of this event.
This is a fucking doomsday cult. But of course, the world did not end in 2012. Or maybe it did and we're all just trapped in this hell. But since we are all still here, Graham has pivoted again, no longer bringing up the Mayan calendar and 2012, instead tying this same story into the refuted pseudoscience mumbo-jumbo known as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis.
The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which is solid science, although undoubtedly disputed, which suggests that multiple fragments of a disintegrating comet hit the Earth 12,800 years ago. The comet that disintegrated, that caused so much damage on Earth 12,800 years ago, its debris stream is still in orbit. The Earth passes through it twice a year, and in the next 30 years we're going to be passing through a very lumpy bit of this 30 million kilometer wide debris stream that's called the Taurid meteor stream.
Like I said, this is a fucking doomsday cult. Get out if you're in it. We have no evidence for these comet impacts, no evidence for a lost civilization, and no evidence that our planet is in any immediate danger. Look, Graham might be most famous for his fake archaeology, but at its heart, his spiritual movement is absolutely a doomsday cult, with constant predictions of a future cataclysm which never ever come true. But Graham just keeps shifting the goalposts and moving on to new predictions. Okay. There's one final important point to make about this video from 1996. Let's check out the ending.
Thank you very much for coming on to Focus tonight. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you too.
That's our program for tonight. For those of you who are interested, Graham Hancock's books are published by Heinemann in the UK and distributed by Strake locally.
Published and distributed by Strake. Where have we seen Strake publishers before?
I think there are a number of reasons why it's so successful. I think that, first of all, it's written by Graham Hancock, who is a regular person. He's not a crackpot fanatic.
Okay, he's clearly a fanatic. We've established that. But even more clear, this is not even a real news report. It's just a promotional video featuring the author and the employees of the company that published the book. It's all just a lie within a lie within a lie, like a nesting doll of Graham Hancock's. But wow, stepping back for just a quick second, this video is absolutely amazeballs. It's a promotional video to sell a book, but it isn't just selling a book. It's selling the whole doomsday cult outlook. I don't really expect it, but archaeologists certainly deserve an apology from Graham Hancock. He has repeatedly claimed that archaeologists have only criticized him because his books were so popular. But this video shows that he's been attacking archaeology and archaeologists with vicious lies and conspiracies since before he became a household name. His entire narrative relies upon poisoning the well, much like how the video started with the conspiracy to silence him.
It's almost as if there's a big conspiracy against him. It's a lot of pompous scholars around, who just don't want to know about it.
The bombshell claim of a conspiratorial cover-up at Giza, despite it being a lie, is the climax of the video.
Absolute secrecy, and that the public were not to be told what was found under the Sphinx until the millionaire leading the entire expedition decided that the public should be told.
But at the heart of the video is the birth of Graham Hancock's cult of fake archaeology. A movement wrapped up in spirituality, doomsday prophecies, and the absolute fucking laziest of all lies about archaeology, archaeologists, and our historical evidence that I have really ever come across.
Rhymes and riddles, tickle, tickle, giggles, squiggle, jiggle, fiddle, flint, untibble. Rhymes and riddles, tickle, tickle, giggles, squiggle, jiggle, fiddle, fibble, 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 Untibble, Flynn, untibble, Flynn, untibble, Flynn, untibble.